Hey, Brian, thank you so much for joining me on an episode of the Scratch Golfers Mindset podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I am thrilled that you are here and really grateful that, our friendship took the next step. We went from phone and text message and email to here we are on video as well. What a great continuing of that.
Right. This is online dating. Here we go.
There we go. I love it. You get it. So, with that said, my friend, we're going to dive into a variety of different topics on all things golf, mental game, your experience, and in whatever way feels best. I'd love for you to share just a little bit more about your golf journey, perhaps maybe just like when the game of golf and how the game of golf became such a passion of yours.
So it filled a void. Quite honestly,
Oh.
I had a restoration company. We had a crew of guys that it was basically a manpower operation where a golf course that was being built needed laborers. And we knew enough people in the Ocean City area and had a business partner at the time. And he circled the wagons and got 10 guys and helped out with the crews, basically all the jobs that nobody else wanted. And we took it on from a manpower situation. I was on the tail end of my powerlifting career, and I was asked by one of the superintendent one day after work. He said, "Hey, we're going to go play golf. Let's go. We're going to go next door to this Pine Shore, this little executive golf course." And I said, "I don't play." He said, "Sure you do. Go grab, there's clubs in the showroom." They were part of just like, dude, they had like just that. It was a showroom. It was a mock up for one of the condos. And I grabbed the clubs and went over and pretty much just kind of fell in love with it. It was weird. That's how it
Wow.
started. At an executive golf course. It went from there to my fear of embarrassment. And I wouldn't allow myself to leave the 9-hole executive course and or the driving range to go to a regular normal size facility, 18-hole facility. I stayed there for a year. Pretty
Wow.
much the first year I never left. And I wasn't going to have it. I wasn't going to go through that whole miserable, this guy stinks kind of thing, so I didn't do it to myself. So, went out and played for the first time. I was 30, 31, something like that. Shot like 101 and then never shot above 100 ever again.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 years later, I was a single digit and won my first club championship. And then it just kind of went from there, honestly, that's my story in a nutshell. So,
That's a phenomenal nutshell, and I sincerely
yes.
appreciate you sharing that. So, if I hear correctly, you didn't more or less pick up a club until you were 31?
30. Yeah. I mean,
30,
I
okay.
didn't go to a regular golf course till I was 31, but yeah, 30.
Wow.
Yep.
So that gives me hope because, I played very consistently in high school, but then it was 15 plus years before I touched a club again. And here I am in my early 30s. And all right, this is inspiring to say the least. But I'm curious, looking back, spending a year only on the range, only at that executive course, I can't help but wonder if that actually really helped you in the long run develop some of those short game essential skills. Tell me more about your thoughts on that.
I never really thought about it, but you're probably right. I mean, I kind of, because of the nature of an executive golf course with it's all par threes. There was like one or two, I think there was two par fours, but they were drivable par fours. So which the way I understand it, that's probably the way the game should be learned is from the greens moving backwards. You know, start with the putting and then go to the chipping and work your time there, and then go into your iron game, and then back to working from the tee with drivers and so on. So I've been trying to do that with my kids. They've resisted forever, in spite of me. I can play or practice at most of the facilities in my area, and they're just not interested right now. So I keep pressuring it, hoping that I'll get them to crack one day. But yeah, so yeah, that's how I never thought about it like that. But you're right. That's probably that kind of came easy to me for some reason. and that's kind of growing up playing all those sports, baseball, football, and so the hand to eye, and that's, I guess, the story I'm going with. I don't know the reason why, but yeah.
Yeah, and it seems to make sense. I love how you said, like, yeah, the game of golf should be approached from the greens and then eventually back to the tee box. And that's kind of the mentality I'm taking. I live 5 minutes or so, or I should say, my girlfriend does, from an executive course. So every time I'm visiting her, it's always a priority to stop there once or twice over the long weekend. And it's because just for that reason, like, how many shots am I going to hit within 120 yards? A lot more than I am driving off the tee box. So if I can fine tune that short game, it's going to serve me just indescribably so in the long run.
And so to this day, if I have, I have to pass golf courses to get to my house every day. So if I stop 2 or 3 times a week and spend 20 minutes putting, 20 minutes chipping, kind of goofing around the end of my day, thinking about what I have coming up or whatever, I do it, and I enjoy it. It's kind of a kind of end of the day, bringing everything down. It's kind of has a calming effect, but at the same time, I am practicing with a purpose. So I think that's important, to put your mind in a place where you're kind of, you still have to have it a competitive, like I've got to make X number of 5-footers or something like that. You have to do that to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, you're just killing time.
I am so happy you shared that. I think that's such an important and overlooked point. Like, just reflecting back, yeah, like you and I both know the value and importance of the consistency putting in practice, but we also know it's doing the same damn thing over and over and over again. And those who experience tremendous success, leaps and bounds above everybody else, find a way to fall in love with the monotony of practicing and doing the little things. So I love what you said. You kind of, it seems like to me, like you gamify it. I have to make X number of 5-footers before either I move on or go home. Did I hear you right?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. You have to make X, or you don't get dinner. And, the fat kid likes to eat, so. So, no, it's not that bad, though. I would never give up a meal. But, yeah, so, yeah. But, I mean, my understanding of truly the way you're supposed to be practiced is not standing on the range and hitting 47 irons. You've got to play a hole in your head. So there's got to be a hole that you've gotten a vision where you've got to, it's a dog leg left, and you've got to get set up and, maybe hit a straight ball or hit a draw. And then that's going to leave you X amount of yards into the green. And so you go from this club to that club. And that's truly the way to practice, is to go down it that way, as opposed to the monotony of hitting the same club over and over again. That makes no sense.
I am so grateful you just shared all of that, because it's so interesting. Like, I say this to most people, and I'll say it to you, like, this podcast is selfish for me. I get to learn from you. Yeah. So does everybody listening. So it's a win-win-win situation. And it's, you saying that you treat the driving range like a practice hole. Like, maybe you hit your 5-wood and then you hit your 7, and then maybe, you may mock out there, you got to hit a pitching wedge or something. But I love hearing that, because it's been so ingrained in some of what I've experienced that you do need to hit 20 shots with your 9, then your 7, then your 5. But the transferability to playing 18 holes is much less than if you're treating each range session like multiple practice holes.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I do hit multiple shots with the same club. But when, once you've got to the point where you're warmed up and you're comfortable, then yeah, at that point, then you need to create a golf course in front of you, at least in my mind. Mm-hmm. And then that's how you need to practice. And then, it's like, I do it kind of the same thing if I'm getting ready to play a tournament. And years ago, I used to run a fair amount, and I would be out running. I would play the golf course that I was getting ready to compete in, and I would play each one of the holes, and then as I was going, I would, of course, I always won, which doesn't happen often, but then I would also envision having struggles. I would envision, hitting errant shots, and then what I was going to do in that situation, or if I'd played the course before and blew up on a specific hole, what was I going to do different on that hole to change things? So I did that so much, like before I would go to bed, or if I was driving, I would think about that. on those rare occasions when something like that actually happened, it would almost be like an epiphany to me, like, oh my God, this is going on. But I had rehearsed it so much, I was already ready for it. So, and maybe that just sounds like that was the only thing that was on my mind. But, leading up to an event, if I knew I was playing that golf course, I would think like that. And I would go over it, what shot I was going to hit and that kind of thing.
I mean,
So.
to be frank, that's such a difference maker as to why you've had some of the incredible success you've had. And I'm curious, this skill of visualization, particularly the skill of visualizing the mistakes and when things go wrong, like so that when they do inevitably happen, it feels like you've been there before. Is this something like, when did you learn or first start implementing this? Was it golf specific? Was it from one of your earlier sports?
I think I did it all the time, maybe even as a kid. I don't know. Like, I was a running back, and later in high school, I played, I was a fullback, and I was smaller, but, I didn't get the ball much, but I blocked a lot, and so on those rare occasions when I did, in my mind, what was I going to do? It was a dive play. Instead of smashing into the linebacker, I'd maybe fake the linebacker out and score a touchdown. So you were visualizing that. I think everybody does that to some degree. But I think in your mind, if you can be a little more detailed, and then go out and actually practice that shot, knowing that there's the potential for it to happen. Listen, early on, I was not the straightest driver of the golf ball, and I lived in the woods. So being able to hit low cut shots or low hook shots, and I still carry a 4-iron, in my bag. So where a lot of other people have gone to hybrids, but yeah, and it sounds crazy, but I never really panicked. Once I got into those situations, because unfortunately I'd been there enough and practiced enough on the range that I knew that there was a way that I could get out for the most part.
Absolutely.
So.
And for those of you listening, it's a wonderful reminder that your mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And I think it hits home for me, and I know so many listening, like, if I, in a perfect world, I'd be on the course every single day. That's just not my reality. You get it, being a business owner, entrepreneur, family man, like I just can't get there as much as I want, but I do before I go to bed, and periodically throughout the day, maybe when I should be working, I'm thinking about my next round. I'm thinking about putting. So I'm visualizing all of it, just like you said. And that is a way to get deliberate, intentional practice in, even without a club in your hand, which is a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Yeah, it was a hard thing for me to accept that you were going to lose more than you were going to win in golf. It just, other than, Tiger Woods was he was a phenom. But I can tell you that I've made myself so miserable going to play in a tournament and playing terrible, and literally on my way home, 2-hour drive, whatever, 3-hour drive, finding a driving range on the way home and pulling over to figure out what I just did.
Wow.
Honest to God, and maybe that's, borderline obsessive, whatever, but it would drive me nuts. And then I just would, so.
Yeah. I mean, I love reframing the word obsession, obsessive. Like, I think it's a gift. It's truly a characteristics of someone who is committed, all in, passionate about their success. So, hey, you're speaking my language. I totally understand. And I'm curious, with that, elite level of work ethic and commitment to your craft, I have found in myself and my clients, there's often a potential to go on a negative spiral of just defeating harsh negative self-talk. Has your self-talk ever been something that's been counterproductive to you playing your best?
No, I think we all badger ourselves to some degree. I hit bad shots and just chastise myself to the nth degree. And that happens. But I think that I've always had the ability, even to lose my temper, and then to be able to bring it back down and kind of circle the wagons to some degree and figure out what was important in the next 30 seconds, and then kind of go at it from that perspective. And it took me a long time to kind of say, hey, that's behind me, and to take the next step. But I did always have a way of being able to settle that back down. And, honestly, some of the best tournament rounds I ever had were starting off playing terrible. I mean, just the nerves and everything, and having a double or triple on the first hole, and then like, okay, now what are you going to do? What are we going to go? Lou Holtz had this acronym for, if you're down 38-0 at halftime, what do? You win, WIN. What's important now? What are you going to do now? That's the next thing we're going to do, because that's behind us. So.
Yeah, it's that next shot mentality. And I love that you said it's almost like, and if I heard, please correct me if I misunderstood, but like if you do happen to hit an errant shot, make a mistake, there's anger, there's frustration. Within 30 seconds, you have course corrected. You are laser focused on that next shot and you just move on from it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't always, get really upset about it, but there are times when I just, if it's something that's just in my wheelhouse, and then I just whiff it, and I just, and that's just a lack of focus, quite honestly. I mean, I don't know how Tiger Woods on his downswing could hear a click of a camera and stop. I've never been that guy. So I could brush something on my backswing and I would continue through the shot, and then I would just kind of internally, like, what are you doing? Why didn't you just stop? Things like that drive me nuts, or something envisions in my head and I have to try it right then. I can't wait till after the round and go. And so that's, that's in there too. So
I hear you. I call that, and I think you'll agree, like I call that the anyway shot. You shouldn't follow through because something's off and you still do it anyway. Yeah. I hear you on that. And for those of you listening, episode 4 digs into all aspects of the anyway shot. So Bryan, I'm curious, as you had a pretty quick navigation, you shot that 101 and never looked back. Well, reflecting on your journey, what do you think was one or maybe a few of the key difference makers that brought you from like a high 80s to consistently shooting in the 70s golfer?
I just always saw there was room for improvement. There was this, you could always get better. And that's actually, I think, one of the big things that got me sucked into golf was that there was always room for improvement. No matter how good you ever got, there was always going to be room for a better shot, So, I guess after the round, and I think everybody does it there again, you kind of look back and you go, wow, I missed this shot and I missed that shot and I missed that shot. So at this point, I kind of, I also kind of give myself a little credit, and I look back and go, that was a quality shot. That was a quality shot, and actually hit it where I am, that kind of thing, that was a smart move. So I do give myself a little credit. When I was younger, I probably didn't do that as often. So I've kind of learned a little bit like that. The game's hard, it just is. So yeah. So you have to do every now and then you have to break down and say, that was good, so.
I love that. So I'm curious, is there any type of structure or formality to what I'll call your post-round reflection? Like, is this something you do in your car after a round?
No, and I probably should do better about that. There's so many different ways now that you can track everything. How many putts, how many greens you're hitting, so on and so forth. And my instructor, Bob Crowther from Bayside Golf Course here, just down in Selbyville, we talk about that a little bit. And I get periodic lessons whether I need them or not. Some of them are talking lessons. I mean, I've gone out on the course with him and hit driver 2 or 3 shots from the tee box, and then we go get my balls and we go to the next hole and we're talking about things, and he's always said to me kind of, what iron are you comfortable with hitting within 15 feet or 20 feet, and we go down that road, and then he'll tell me, well, the other clubs, why aren't you hitting to the middle of the green or aim towards the middle of the green? And I've never done it, but one day I want to do that. Like try to hit every single green, but focus on the middle of the green. Because if you're a decent putter, so one day I'll get to it. One day I'll try it, But there's, the guys on tour, I mean, I remember listening to Nick Price when he won the British Open, and every single pin if the pin was to the right side of the green, he aimed at the middle and either tried to cut it or draw it. He was drawing it so and the miss was always in the middle, and so I don't know. He won the British Open. So apparently it was a thing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, circling back to bring this together, like the fact that you do have some type of post-round reflection, and maybe it's more formal some days versus not, is great. But the fact that you say you try to find what went well or your positives and give yourself some credit, that's huge, because we all know it's very easy, and perhaps more common for some of us than others, to have a frustrating score, to only remember the bad shots. And if you continue to let that ripple into your future rounds, you stop having as much fun. And this is a game at the end of the day. But two, you allow some of that frustration to bleed into your family life, your personal life. And then you're just knocking down some dominoes that are not very fun to put back up, to say the least.
Yes. I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
True. So, yeah. I mean, I tried. I got a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. So I try when I get home, regardless of golf, work, whatever, to kind of leave it there at the door and try to, come in and then make it about them. So
I love that. Yeah. And for everybody listening, like something I do personally and recommend to my clients is take 2 to 5 minutes in your car, either while you're still at the parking lot of the golf course or when you pull in your driveway, to emotionally off gas. If that looks like breath work or meditation, great. If that looks like opening the notes app on your phone and voice noting what went well from your round, where you need to focus, learn, or what could have gone better, you just kind of emotionally vomit all of those things, get them off of your mind. Go be present with your family and loved ones, and then you can come back to them at a later time when you're a little bit less emotionally charged.
Yeah, I agree with all that. It's it's just it's not fair. It's not fair to everybody else, and you get to a point, if you're doing it all the time, you come home, and then the kids don't want to see you, and you're just miserable. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to be that guy. So
I love it.
Yeah.
So circling back to your golf career, if you will, the tournaments, what did you find to be one of the biggest mental challenges playing tournaments versus more of the recreational round with some buddies?
Early on, it was just, I guess, realizing that I could play with these guys and that I actually belonged there. You go walk up and down the driving range at any event, a state event, whether it's amateur or there's an open, and you see some amazing swings and good swings, and you recognize people with reputations and so on and so forth. And for me, it goes back to when I first started playing. I didn't want to embarrass myself. So some of the practicing, and if you're going to put yourself out there, I wanted to be able to be ready, I guess, for whatever I was taking on. Because I think showing up and not being prepared just didn't make sense. That part just didn't make sense to me. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or not. But yeah, getting comfortable with realizing that I belonged or that I could play with them, that took a while. It just did, I didn't grow up playing the game. So, and I'm still learning, always learning. So
I love that. So walk me through. I'm always so curious to learn this. Like, let's say we've got a 3 or even a 4-day tournament here. It's Sunday. It's the last day. Let's just assume you're in contention. Like, walk the listeners and I through, if you have, let's just call it a 1:30 tee time for simplicity. What does the pre-round routine look like to get yourself in the best state of mind, physically, emotionally, and mentally to play your A game?
I will, regardless of the event, work out in the morning. And I do that. I do it, I'm in the gym 6 days a week anyway. So that's a part of my routine. So I'm not going to deviate from my routine. And so I will start the day that way. Get there plenty of time so that I can do the things that I think I need to work on maybe. if it's bunker play or just chipping or something like that, and allow myself to hit enough shots that I'm confident going into the round. And whether that's with my driver, whatever it is. And honestly, there's a lot of times when you don't fix it, and you still go and you play because that's what you do, I mean, that's what you signed on for. So, but yeah, I just having enough time, I guess, and then just working on the things that you think you need to work on. And that's, based on your performance leading up to that point, the couple days prior to. So
I love that you said you don't change your routine. I think it's so easy, whether it's excitement, change in schedule, to get carried away or lost in the moment where we start tweaking things, second guessing. But it's actually so advantageous when you stick to what you usually do. You conserve precious willpower, mental and emotional energy that's better spent on actually performing during the round. So I love hearing that.
Yeah. I just don't, I didn't learn that. That's just what I do. So I don't know any different, honestly. So
that makes sense. Being such
yeah.
a decorated athlete growing up, like you've gravitated towards routine. You recognize consciously and unconsciously there is so much power in routine.
Yeah. I mean, some of that goes back when I, through, playing other sports. And then I got, when I was in high school, I was very fortunate to have good coaches and I from the wrestling team. And I didn't start wrestling until I was a freshman in high school, but I was very fortunate with some good coaches, and they, a couple of those guys really impressed upon me that you never know what the other guy's doing, and are you willing to take that next step, or to do better? And I remember I was at an intensity camp out of Iowa, and one of the guys was doing an instructing and just stopped what he was doing and dropped down and did like 50 push-ups and stood back up and said, listen, you don't know what the other guy's doing. And you need to always, feel like you're one step ahead. And for whatever reason, I never forgot that because he was still training. He was still working out. He still had goals. And so, there again, I'm not sure if I answered the question or not, but yeah. So just constantly working to get better, I guess.
I love that. And that's been a wonderful, thread rather through all of our conversation today, which has been great. Like this just open-mindedness and appreciation that there's always something to learn is that it's going to be that undercurrent that fuels the Thursday night late round practices by yourself after a long week, the early morning workouts by yourself, because it's always an opportunity to get better. I love hearing you echo that to all of the listeners.
Yeah, and I mean at this stage in my my kind of golf career, it's I'm kind of looking at like if I can win something this year, it will be a good year.
Okay.
I'm kind of like I don't know. I guess I just in my mind I still want to be relevant in that tournament circle.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know if it's ego or whatever. I don't know, but I still have the drive, and I'm willing to do what I feel like I need to do and able to compete. So, yeah. So
I love
that's so.
Yeah. So reflecting back, is there something, let's call it 10 years ago, if you knew what you knew now 10 years ago, like what's that one piece of advice or that one tidbit of information that now you wish you knew 10 years ago that would have accelerated even more success and progress?
Wow. For me it was figuring out how to practice, I guess in the beginning, doing that the correct way, because you can get hung up on, and I see kids do it all the time. They get a big bucket of balls and at my club, and I remember going over to a couple of kids, and the kids are just swinging, and they're hitting the ball so fast, and they're not actually taking in what they did. And I remember stopping over and just saying to the kid, "Hey, are you aiming at something? What are you aiming at? Because I haven't seen your head come up to look down the range. Is there a target in mind?" And so just being more conscious of the practice parts of things. And I got caught up in that too. I mean, it was more about well, I'm going to hit 2 buckets of balls. It wasn't about hitting 1 bucket and doing it the right way. So making my practices better probably is what I
Mm.
would, if I had to go back and say, from the golf standpoint, um, I wouldn't change much about the mental side. Not that smart to begin with. So, that part of it is, I don't want to go down that road. So, but yeah, just making the practices better, more
Which, and
efficient.
I'll boost you up and give you more credit than you're willing to give yourself. That is absolutely a form of the mental game. Like being able to slow down and give yourself permission to slow down and bring concentration, focus, awareness, and intention to your practice produces far greater quality reps than just starting to get quantity, quantity, quantity. And that's a superpower. Like, cause I relate to that. Like I almost, I see and hear some of myself in your journey only in the fact that you started playing in your early 30s. And I'm like, man, I want to hit tens of thousands of shots because I want to make up for lost time. But logically, I do know it is quality over quantity. And when I slow down on the range and I reassess my grip, my alignment, my stance, I observe and reflect on why the ball did what it did. That's what my subconscious needs to further ingrain that smooth, fluid swing that I'm after. So I love hearing you share that.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Everything that you're saying right now, but that, I don't know, um, you caused me to think back about like how I did things before and how I do it now. And I think, not having as much time either,
Yeah.
to be able to do that probably factored into it as well, so, um, uh, when I was single, and I didn't really have anybody else to answer to, I could do that. I could go play 18 after work and so, I still have a lot of flexibility, but I don't take advantage of it in that capacity. So
Yeah, I hear you there. And before I let you go, Bryan, I'd love to hear more. Like, share with the listeners about your business and what you do for the game of golf. I think it's so fascinating.
yeah, so I had, reached out to a company called Scoreboards of America probably 20 years ago, and they had a company in Jacksonville, Florida. I flew down there after talking to them on the phone, and, I saw what they were trying to accomplish, but there was not a synergistic relationship between. So we put in scoreboards. I need to back up. We put in professional scoring systems, put in scoreboards, and my business, where it applies, I give an industry exclusive. So we have one orthopedic doctor, we have one accountant, we have one HVAC company, and in the local community, um, well, you can hear my dogs in the background. My kid my son, I think, just came home. Um, um, that means a lot, and so it's just name recognition. And then we there was not a synergistic relationship between the advertisers and the golf course and how they could help one another. So I kind of figured some of that out. And, over the last 19 years, we go to different golf courses. We do that. We help them fill their tee sheet. And at the same time, we give rewards cards to all of the advertisers that they can pass along to their customer base. They get some free golf along the way. And it's kind of I know it's a bad win-win situation, but yeah. So, it's been working so far, and I've been doing it for 19 years now. So work with 12 different facilities. I've got some projects down at Virginia Beach, 2 very nice golf courses, as far north as, Deerfield up in Newark, Delaware, which is another, really nice golf course. So, and a lot here, Ocean City. Ocean City's got a lot of good golf courses here. So,
So many. Yeah. Really neat.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
very fortunate.
Yeah. Well, outstanding. Bryan, thank you so much for coming on to share more about your journey and really letting us into your wisdom, your insight, and how you approach the game with truly a tremendous level of success. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know. You're too nice. You're too kind. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So, anyway, thank you very much.
You are welcome. And for those of you listening, thank you for tuning into another episode of the Scratch Golfer's Mindset podcast. If you found today's episode valuable, which I absolutely know you did, share it with a friend, share it with a fellow golfer who absolutely will find value as well. And if you haven't done so already, 30 seconds to leave a genuine rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, wherever you're listening to the show, is greatly appreciated by me. Well, thank you so much for listening. Have an outstanding round of golf this weekend, and I'll catch you in the next episode.